Hello and welcome to another edition of Sree's Sunday New York Times Read Along. My name is Neil Parekh. I am the guest host today. I'm also the executive producer. I will be wearing multiple hats. As someone put it on Twitter, I'll be a one-man band, but we'll figure it out as we go. Sree is out of town this week, and this is the new format that we're doing with the show, where we don't have a guest usually. We'll be focusing on just the newspaper. It's been quite a while since I have guest hosted alone and focused on just the paper. Usually, when I've guest hosted, we've had other folks for me to talk to. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, my Instagram this week, and our Digimentors website. Please like, comment, share, retweet, do all the things you do to make sure that folks find this show. I want to give a quick shout out to everyone who's watching the replay. Thank you so much for joining us. We always appreciate folks who take time to come back later. And I'm going to be occasionally asking for help from the audience just to double check what's some things that are going on technically. So I see we have a couple of comments, and I'm going to make an assumption that the audio is working well. But please make sure to let me know if I lose audio at any point, since I'm dealing with multiple computers and different devices, etc. We have a lot of ground to cover in the paper today, and we definitely want to make sure that we talk about a little bit about what goes into planning this show. What's interesting is that when I started promoting the show Friday, the big news was the end of the government shutdown and the Epstein files, or at least the emails, and the vote on the Epstein files. And Speaker Johnson finally swearing in the representative from Arizona. By Sunday morning, those stories were mostly not on the front page when I took a quick look at the front page. So it's it's interesting in terms of trying to predict what the main story is when there isn't breaking news going on. But let's go ahead and welcome a few of our guests first who are watching, and then we'll get right into the paper. We have Jonathan Borstein. I want to repeat that for those in the back who might have missed it. Jonathan Borstein, watching from the East Village. Thank you, Jonathan. We appreciate you joining us as always. We have who else do we have? We have Philip Blair, rather, saying good morning. Philip, pleasure to meet you. I don't recognize your name, so you might be a first-time commenter, long-time viewer, but let us know where you're watching from, and thank you for joining us. Doug Levy is joining from Marin County, California at 5:30 a.m. Pacific time. As a long-time, I made a mistake once of calling him old. He's a long-time radio guy, so he's used to the early hours. But thank you for spending your early morning with us. Sujana Chandrasekhar checking in, saying, I believe New Jersey, right? Good morning from blustery weatherland. Is it cold up there in the New York area? Sujana? Paula Kiger is watching from Tallahassee, Florida. Thank you, Paula. Paula is a longtime producer of the show and a dear personal friend. Paula, thank you so much for your support of all of the shows and the work that we do. Patricia Freudenberg is watching, offering grace and greetings from New York. It was Patricia that said that I'm a one-man band and I've got this. So thank you, Patricia, for that vote of confidence. Again, for folks who may be joining us late or for the first time, Sree is out of town this week. I am guest hosting, and it's the first time I'm guest hosting in a long time when we're going to focus on just the newspaper. So it'll be interesting today. And unfortunately, I won't be able to drop many links into the chat. If I had a more of an octopus set up here, maybe I'd be able to do that, but we'll see. Ken Fisher is saying hi. Good morning from Iowa. We've got your back, Neil. Thank you, Ken. Again, I mentioned earlier, in case I lose audio, uh, let me know because I'm using my desktop for the webcam. I've got my laptop so that when I go to the paper, I'll be able to still, you know, do some things and check comments, etc. But I'm actually my audio is coming through from my phone, and that phone is going to be the screen is off at the moment until I get to the newspaper. So a lot of things going on, but we'll make it work. And Jonathan says, so far I'm loud and clear. Thank you, Jonathan. Philip says we hear you as well. Good on YouTube. Uh, my mom saying good morning from Hastings on Hudson, New York. It's been a while since I've been able to do this on air properly, but hi, Mom. Hi, Mom. And I want to assure you that I actually don't only talk to her on Sunday mornings. I do actually call several times a week after dropping my daughter off at school for a quick early morning phone call. But it's always great to have my mom watching these shows. And my longtime radio guy says the audio is good. Stephen Kaplan saying, good morning, Neil. Wonderful to be here and looking forward to this new read along format. Looking good, my man. Thank you, Stefan. And Stefan just came back from an incredible trip to Romania, if I'm not mistaken, where he's there over Halloween. Incredible picture, Stefan. Great work. And I know that you were sick for a bit coming back. I was sick as well last week. So I hear you. It's definitely not a lot of fun to deal with that. What else? Who else do we have watching? Because I saw 4 weeks in a YouTube ID. So 4 weeks says hi, and Eva Henry is asking, "What is this?" That's interesting, Eva. So curious to see how you found the show. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and my Instagram, and our Digimentors website. Um, and Eva, every week, Sree Srinivasan, who is the host of the show, I'm the guest host and executive producer. We've been reading the New York Times together for about 10 years. Sree, 10 years ago, took a Sunday New York Times, put it on the table, aimed his phone at it when it was just Facebook Live, and started commenting on the layout, the graphic design, the articles. It's not a deep dive of any of the articles. We really look at the headlines and the pull quotes. We look at the pictures, the captions, and then we offer comments and observations. We also get comments, like you could see, from people watching, and it's a very interactive show. So we appreciate you joining us. This is actually the 378th episode of the New York Times Read Along. So we've been doing this for quite a while. Hopefully, you'll come back and join us. You can also join our mailing list if you're interested. You can send an email to neil@digimentors.group. That's my email address, neil@digimentors.group. So we'll see who else is watching. And 4 weeks says they're watching from Stoddard. So thank you, 4 weeks. Ron Thomas says greetings from Dubai. Ron, another former guest and good friend. Thank you, Ron. Ron will tune in to the show regardless of where he is in the world. He does a lot of traveling, and we appreciate that. And Philip says he's watching from Washington State's 4th Congressional District. Philip, first of all, thank you for watching from the West Coast. I know it's early, but remind me where the 4th Congressional District is, because I used to live in Seattle for about 15 years. And if I'm not mistaken, the Seattle district was the 2nd at the time. I'm trying to remember where the 4th is, but give me a city if you can. That would be great. And he says octopus setup. That would be funny. It'd be cool to have 8 independently thinking arms working in harmony. Hey, I'd take just an extra arm, but if I had a third arm coming out of my back, I figured it'd be an AI generated image or something. But we'll see. We'll see what we can do. And Sujana is saying that, Ron, when you come to the New York area, pack an extra bag of those dates stuffed with almonds and covered in chocolate, Dubai chocolates. Absolutely. And Sujana is also watching on Twitter. Thank you for reposting that, Sujana. Appreciate that. And I'm going to be checking real quick for some folks on LinkedIn. We don't get the name and picture with the image that comes through. So I have to do a little bit of detective work. And it's Layla Pinto who's watching from on LinkedIn and says, been a long-time reader of the New York Times. I'm at the gym, so listening while working out is awesome. That's great. And I want to say, Layla, thank you so much. And it's a great way to remind folks that in addition to the video format that we have, there are two things. There are a few things I want to share with you about the production. One, with the new format, we actually are also uploading these shows to Spotify, and you can listen as a podcast. And it's interesting. Spotify lets you watch the video as well, or you can listen in the traditional audio format. And you can find Sree Sunday New York Times Read Along on Spotify. You can search for hashtag NYT Read Along, and you'll find it, or just NYT Read Along. And feel free to listen later at your convenience. The other thing I want to point out is for folks who are watching on Instagram, and we do have several people watching. I'm going to look a little bit to my side. I hate looking off camera, but that's where I've got the Instagram set up. Trisha Schroeder, a former colleague of mine from Washington State, is watching. Walter Grayson is watching as well. Walter, we'll be having a quick announcement in just a moment you'll be wanting to pay attention to. Diane Stefani says good morning from Margate, New Jersey. And Walter says it's a good morning from an unreasonably warm Twin Cities, heart of the work for equity and sustainability. Absolutely. And then Parvod Kumar Sharma is also watching on Instagram, says good morning to your viewers from Chappaqua, New York, PK Sharma and family. Now, for the folks watching on Instagram, one of the things that we've been able to do, a new feature from StreamYard, the platform we use to produce the show, is that we are now fully vertical on StreamYard. So the folks watching on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn and our website gets a nice horizontal view, but Instagram is fully vertical. So I want to, again, asking for help from the audience. The audience, instead of seeing Sunday New York Times Read Along up top and the 10 years Digimentors plus scroll.in graphic, you see it at the bottom. So on Instagram, where you see my name, on the horizontal view where you see my name, that's where Sree Sunday New York Times Read Along goes. And what's interesting is that when we put comments on the screen, such as Pratya's good morning from Silver Spring, horizontally, you're seeing it here. Instagram, they see it up there. Lots of things going on. Let me just make a few quick other announcements before we turn to the paper. I mentioned the scroll.in graphic on the right-hand side. Sree Sunday New York Times Read Along is produced by Digimentors in partnership with Scroll and Scroll Global, one of India's most important independent websites. Thank you so much for your partnership. We're live on Scroll's YouTube channel, and it just opens up a huge audience for us. We also want to acknowledge our sponsors. I mentioned Walter earlier. We have two New York Times read-along sponsors. The first, Muck, longtime sponsor of the show, but the Graphic History Company, Walter's company, joined us this year as a sponsor with our new format. So thank you so much for your support, Walter, and to the Graphic History Company for your support of the show. And as we're talking about the Graphic History Company, I want to give you a heads up on Volume 2 of the Graphic History of Hip Hop, which will be coming out soon. You can sign up for updates at graphichistorycompany.com. That's all one URL, but I wanted to make the font big, graphichistorycompany.com. And watching on Instagram, Sujana switched over real quick. and her line was, I was right about Instagram. Totes Vert. Sujana, you're so cool. You're so with it and hip. Totes Vert uh, translates as totally vertical, in case you were not familiar with the lingo that youngins like Sujana throw out there. But thank you, Sujana. I'm glad that you were able to take a look and see what that looks like. The show, of course, is produced by Digimentors, the consulting firm that Sree set up and that I'm proud to work with him on. We do digital marketing, events and digital programs, strategic communications, trainings, and workshops, and a lot of work on AI as well. So that is a lot of preliminary work. And for folks who have joined us, there's some new kind of features and new announcements. And again, for folks watching on Spotify or watching on Spotify, great. If you're listening on Spotify, I will do my best to narrate, more and describe more, and not rely as much on the visuals. But particularly, I know that some people who are joining us on Facebook might put the phone down and cook breakfast. So it is always a good reminder to show to describe what we're seeing. And let's see where Mary Curtis is watching. Not so good morning from Charlotte. Yes, Charlotte is definitely going to be in the news where Border Patrol is terrorizing folks, smashed a window of a citizen, dragged him out of the car, slamming people on concrete. A lot of scary times indeed. Pradnya is offering to help produce behind the scenes next time. Pradnya, we might take you up on that. We'll be in touch. Thank you. Patricia did appreciate the tutorial and how informative it was. Dr. Tachi is watching from Fort Lauderdale, and Patricia very helpfully put in the URL into Facebook for folks watching there for graphichistory.com. It's actually graphichistorycompany.com. Patricia, if you don't mind adding that, that would be great. Amy McIntyre is watching from the Pacific Northwest, and Philip is saying, 4th Congressional District is Yakima, of course, the Tri-Cities, Moses Lake. When you were here, I'm guessing the 4th included Ellensburg and Wenatchee, but those lines were redrawn. Okay, so that is what we're covering in terms of the preliminaries and all of the announcements. Let's go into the paper, because this is just a 1-hour show. I got a lot to cover. So let's go ahead, and while I do that, I'll make one other announcement as I transition over. As you may have heard last week, I also produced a show on mental health called Shining Light on Shadows, a candid conversation about mental health. And we did an incredible show on perimenopause and mental health. You'll be able to find it on my website, neilparekh.org. And we're going to be doing a follow-up on postmenopause on mental health. So check that out. And thank you, everyone, for watching and for your support of that show. All right, so let's see if I can make this transition to the newspaper. I will stop this camera here and turn on, and boom, there we go. There's the paper. Now, I always like pointing out that the ads. This is a Ralph Lauren cover. It's a wraparound ad for the newspaper that was on the front page. So that was interesting. Okay, so the front page, and Mary Curtis talked about this earlier, is focused on the lead story and the display photo. And that's interesting, is that because it's not often, first of all, that you get a 2-column lead on the right hand side, and that the display photo shows is related to that. Usually, the display photo is a different story altogether. So this is the display photo, and this is the lead story. Homeland's core missions disrupted by deportations, a sharp pivot from combating terrorism, smuggling, and child exploitation, which is really interesting. And they chose Stephen Miller as the headshot that goes with that, the architect of a lot of Donald Trump's policies. A quick note for those watching on Instagram: the alignment. So while I'm showing the paper in kind of a nice width with a little bit of a border on each side, a little black, The vertical side gets shows just the picture with the police. It's cut off a little bit. New York Times is cut off. So I'm going to do my best to make sure you both get good views. But this is what we're playing with. And I think it looks really great on Instagram, just with a few caveats. The other story above the fold: consumers' pain motivates Trump to act on prices. Affordability effort. What's interesting is after the elections, Trump has been talking a lot more about affordability. But what's interesting is that again, there is just there's so much that doesn't make sense. He's actually telling people that costs are down when they're up. He's telling people gas prices are lower, but they're actually higher than last year. Eggs, and there's I don't know if folks caught the comments about the Walmart that Thanksgiving will be less expensive this year. He cited the Walmart Thanksgiving basket, but the Walmart Thanksgiving basket was actually had fewer items in it this year than last year. That's not an economic indicator, folks. I'm not an economist, but that's an easy one. Uh, it's just beyond. I just cannot fathom how uh, they can claim these kind of things and get away with it for the most part. Here's an article right below. It's kind of right around the fold. How fallout from Trump documentary paralyzed the BBC. Food is blamed in Mexico City as drains clogged. I think this is food trucks. Their waste is clogging up the sewers. Um, the outrage over the death of Kit Kat by a driver who has no heart. Most drivers have hearts, but Waymo cars do not, and that's what happened in San Francisco. So that's interesting. So that's what we have on the front page. I'm going to do the front page of each section real quickly, and then go back and spend time with the newspaper. Sunday Opinion is this story, and it's interesting in terms of to get a full view of the front page. We'll zoom out, and folks on vertical can see that as well for the most part. The U.S. military bombed this boat, which is government, which the government alleges uh, was transporting drugs in the Caribbean overnight on October 24th. It is one of 20 such strikes the Trump administration has conducted since September. And there's a picture, unclassified image of the attack. And then the headline: "Launching a drug war won't solve America's fentanyl crisis." Um, so that's interesting. This is I'm really looking forward to this story. The post Cold War era has ended. What should we call this one? Um, and here's the first reference to the Epstein files, as I mentioned earlier. The newly released Epstein emails leave a few questions unanswered, such as why doesn't Trump want more disclosure? It was interesting that on the front page there was no reference to the end of the government shutdown or to the Epstein files. So it shows how difficult it is to predict the news, to predict what's going to be uh, the focus a few days out. This is the Sunday Business: the man yelling iceberg on the Hollywood Titanic. And that's the view of the front page. The journalist Matthew Baloney has grabbed industry power brokers' attention by telling them their power is in decline. Hollywood certainly, in terms of, especially with the pandemic, people just aren't going to movies anymore. Sports betting as a lifeline for college athletics. Um, so that's what's on the Sunday Business. We have Sunday Styles. It's interesting that this is in the Styles. I'm just looking at the picture, but we'll get below the fold in just a moment. Um, Another Kennedy enters the fray. Um, John F. Kennedy's grandson, Jack Schlossberg, is running for Congress. He says he's not for all tastes. It's a Maureen Dowd piece. He is a social media, I've seen him referenced as a social media provocateur. But an article about him entering a congressional race for Jerry Nadler's seat in New York as the cover of Styles instead of in the news section. Hopefully, I'm sure it was in the news earlier in the week. I'd be curious about what they say in the Styles section. And then there's no place like home for this jacket. Judy Garland wore it for a 61 concert at Carnegie Hall. After a long odyssey, it's back. There's the jacket, or a detail from the jacket. Arts and Leisure is again, you can't tell which what city this is, but it looks like, I don't know. Let's see. Take a look. It is more than a museum. The newest installation of a Harlem institution helps redefine 125th Street. So that's what we're looking. It's in Harlem there. I would not have guessed that in terms of the view. Um, this was interesting when I looked through when I was setting up the paper. This is not the magazine, folks. Oh, this is the other side. It's Google Shopping Holiday 100. Um, I've not seen that kind of a insert before. It looks and feels like a magazine, and it's an advertisement. Shop Google 100's trending products of the year, and Ciara's favorite on the list. So that's an interesting advertisement. We'll set that over there. There we go. A little bit of Hamilton, the book review cover. Angelica, Eliza, and Peggy, if you know from the song In Pride and Pleasure, the biographer Amanda Vale tells the story of the Schuyler sisters, three complex women who lived with warmth, humor, and insight. And the relative sizes of the pictures show kind of where the history has focused its attention. And of course, in Hamilton, Peggy is kind of an afterthought intentionally. New York Times Magazine, her desire to be a new mom again at 65 led to felony charges and a custody battle like no other. That's the cover story in the magazine. We'll set the book review over there. And there's also a tea magazine, which we've never really spent time with. But this is the New York Times Style magazine focused on travel. But it says here, flour, sugar, butter, a world of pastries. Interesting. So you travel and cooking at the same time. That is the overview of the paper. Let's take a look at what comments have come through while I was focusing on the paper, and then we will get to the rest of the stories. Let's see here. Scrolling back. Good morning. Valerie says good morning from Greenwich Village. Thank you, Valerie. Apollo is watching from Philadelphia. My mom says the picture looks perfect. That's great. Deborah is watching from Fort Lauderdale. Deborah, thank you so much. And Philip says, I noticed some of those uniforms saying Bureau of Prisons. Unsettling to see that in neighborhood snatch and grab ops. It was already unsettling, but we don't think of our homes as prisons. Absolutely. Kevin Kissinger says that in Maryland, I pay $2.79 for gas. That's a pretty good price. I think it's a little higher here in Northern Virginia, where I'm based. But it's the question is, how much were you paying last year at this time? Certainly worth looking up. Jonathan says the Studio Museum is an important institution in the world of art, and the Studio Museum is what we were looking at here in this cover image in Arts and Leisure, and that's I'm assuming it's a view from the museum looking. I can't quite tell. I was obviously can't quite tell what they're looking at. It looks like Manhattan in the distance. If I'm not quite sure of the perspective on that. Let's see if it says here. The roof garden at the Studio Museum in Harlem, the $160 million building rises 7 stories, doubling the amount of exhibition space. So it must be looking downtown then. Thank you, Jonathan. Let's see what else. Sujin says, got to say the Schuyler piece for my niece and daughter. Absolutely. And Patricia asks, what is my favorite sections to read first? President says, love me, Thelma Golden. And yes, Johnson says that's looking south. Patricia, you know what? I can't remember the last time someone asked me that question because, of course, we are usually talking with guests. So what I usually do, first of all, I mostly read the paper on my phone in my app. I probably turn to it, 15 times a day. And what I love is the fact that my daughter Emily is actually reading articles in the New York Times now as well. But when I do get the paper, and particularly on Sunday mornings, I think certainly the front page is important. I like the book review. I've always liked the book review because it to me it's a chance to read history and learn about people, mostly the nonfiction reviews. And then I would probably go to the opinion section next. That's what I usually do. I did say we would focus on the magazine and the book review this week. So we will certainly try and do all of that. Quick comment from Walter: boosted New York Times read along coverage on Instagram. Thank you, Walter. And for now, time for Facebook. Good morning from the unseasonably warm Twin Cities and McAllister College, world capital for work and equity and sustainability. So Walter's coming over from Instagram and sharing his hellos with our Facebook friends as well. All right, so let's dig into the paper. First, in the front page, I always like pointing out this little tidbit for the production side. So if you notice, there's a little bit of an insert here. The New York Times printing plant in New York at College Point can print a full 40 pages, if I'm not mistaken, per section. But the Times, in order to be able to get it delivered across the country, is printed at like 25, 26 plants. In Seattle, when I lived there, it was the Seattle Times that printed the paper. They would get the paper about noon on Saturday, and all the advanced sections earlier. They'd print it and then bundle it and deliver. Here in DC, it's the Washington Post, and most other plants can't do the full section. So the national section, the front page section, the A book, gets almost like an insert. And I've always been fascinated by that because sometimes I know that the Times is intentional, the design folks, with what story goes on this, because that's almost like a secondary section front. It's easy to read when you're flipping through. And this is the outrage over the Waymo car hitting the cat is really what gets your attention. So just a little tidbit there for you. That would have been buried on page 21 in the New York papers. All right, so let's take a look at what we have in the A book, and let's see what stories we can dig into. On page A2 and A3, which 2 years ago we had the editor of A2 and A3, Megan DiTrolio, join us for the redesign to explain how things were redesigned. My favorite, Patricia, you're asking my favorite section. My favorite column is the story behind the story, which is inside the Times. And this article is 3 Habsburgs and a reporter walk into a vault. The 17-carat Florentine diamond, missing for 100 years, was safe all along in a Canadian bank. And this is going to be the story behind the story, which is interesting. So we'll definitely check that out. And let's see, we have on the right-hand side the Dateline section. So this is showing where just a little bit of where Times reporters are writing from this week. Browning, Montana, Bogota, Colombia, La Puebla del Rio in Spain, and Huckernall, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, in New Zealand. Just to give you a sense. Tribes like the Blackfeet in western Montana were especially vulnerable to cuts in food assistance because of the government shutdown. Few leaders have taken on President Trump as openly as President Gustavo Petro of Colombia. These are just like the headlines. Jason Horowitz interviewed Jose Antonio Morante Camacho, the renowned bullfighter who ended his career last month. In addition to his artistry, fans admired his honesty about his mental health struggles. Very interesting. A police raid and criminal case against a longtime cultivator of cannabis in New Zealand has stirred up debates about medicinal marijuana. There is a column on wordplay, tips for today's puzzle, and this is written in wordplay. A Times Games columnist helps readers solve the day's crossword puzzle. Beware, spoilers are ahead. And this is written by Caitlin Lovinger. I do want to give a quick shout out. If you remember, I think it was last year, Deb Amlin, who is the games one of the games columnists, was our guest, and we talked all about New York Times games. Well, Deb has retired from the paper, and so we want to wish her a fond farewell and let you know that next week, if you are into games, I believe that next week is going to be Puzzle Mania. I will confirm that as soon as I can, because I know I got an email from Tom Jolly, the print editor, giving me a heads up. but I want to just make sure that I have that right. Let's see. And no, yes, the following Sunday, November 23rd, is both Puzzle Mania and the New York Times gift guide. So you'll want to join us for that. Okay, so moving into the paper itself, there's an article in the international section. As winter bears down, Russia targets Ukraine's heat. And then ChatGPT use is suspected for cheating in AI course. I think this is in Seoul, Korea. A lot of noise about using AI in courses. Young Chilean energized the Latin American left, but that was then. 4 years later, a right wing candidate is the favorite to win in Chile. Um, Trump officials are foiling deals at the G20 summit. That's the headline on the bottom left. More misery in Gaza as rain floods camps. Now, a huge full page advertisement. You can see it really well on Instagram vertically. I'm kind of pulling out so you can see that. But this is a story 250 years in the making. The American Revolution. This is Ken Burns's new documentary, and I am definitely looking forward to watching this. It's very similar to his Civil War documentary, but with a few additional some advancements in technology. But it should be a really um, great show. And Prenya says, excuse me, Ken Burns. I'm assuming that's a good Ken Burns, Prenya. Let's make sure of that. And Walter hopefully shared the link. How you spell it out, it's www.graphichistory.com, graphichistorycompany.com, but make sure there are no spaces when you type in the URL. Mukul says the book review is his favorite section as well. So thank you, Mukul. And Monique Lewis says, good morning, all. Hope everyone's Sunday's off to a great start. Thank you, Monique. All right, so what else do we have? This is Pope Leo urges film notables to redouble focus on social justice. Speaking of Pope Leo, Walter, can you remind us where Pope Leo went to school? I can't remember offhand. Somewhere, he's American, somewhere in the States, but Walter, if you're still watching there, where did Pope Leo go to school? Help us out here. That's a setup for you, Walter. Hope you bring that home. UK rapist with dozens of victims gets life term. Iran seizes fuel tanker en route to Singapore. That's some of the other articles, and then this is the article about the Mexico City, the famous food to blame for fatty clogs in drains. But this is the sewer system. Their street food is causing a problem. And then this is interesting. So I'm going to pull back to show. This is going to be easier to see on the wide view. It's a 2-page spread. Advertisement for Instacart, your Thanksgiving prep companion. Let Instacart help bring some holiday magic to your Thanksgiving dinner with a few tricks, tips, and quips. A planning tip, a shopping tip, decor tip, stock up the spice rack, and it's giving all sorts of ideas. Double check your shopping list. Interesting ad with a QR code to boot in the bottom corner. Use the promo code Thanksgiving10 at checkout to get $10 off your first Instacart order. But I just think that's a really well done ad. We have in fishing village of a Colombian believed killed in a U.S. boat strike. So that's this article here. Of course, that's the extrajudicial killings that the Trump administration has been doing over the last several weeks. We now know the name of the Caribbean buildup, but not the end game. That's another reference there. Absolutely. Let's see what else. Women describe horrors they endured in Assad's prisons in Syria, using families of rebels as pawns in the civil war. How the fallout from a Trump documentary paralyzed the BBC. What's interesting is that we're still in the international section. This is a lot of international coverage this week. The full page article, you can see it well on Instagram because of the page. and I'm trying to pull out so you can see it. Full coverage of this BBC scandal. Now we get to the national section, and I'm going to go back to the front page for a second, because I want to think about just comment on what we didn't see on the front page. Although I saw it prominently on the New York Times app over the last day or two. Nothing about Trump and Saudi Arabia. Was it Saudi Arabia or the Middle East? I forget I think it was Saudi Arabia, where there's a Trump. The Trump organization is working on deals while Trump is in office. There's nothing about how Trump is selling "Make America Great Again" paraphernalia in the White House. Nothing about that on the front page. But let's see what we have in the national section. At these cafes, it's always a free fix menu. Volunteers repair items once destined for trash. Um, this is part of their 50 states and 50 fixes series about local innovation around the environment and sustainability. These are repair cafes. Has anyone been to a repair cafe in their neighborhood? I think they're great. We went to one here in Northern Virginia. And as I'm looking back on the comments, let's see, Sujana said the Roman Catholic bishop's video has 13 million social media views. And let's see, what else? What other comments? It was my mom that answered that question for you, Walter. Villanova. Walter also went to Villanova. I was trying to set him up. But yes, Villanova is where Pope Leo went. And let's see, President said, I had the honor of meeting her when I was an intern at the Whitney, and she was a relatively junior curator there. And I'm not sure who the reference is to. Sorry if I missed that, President. And Dr. Tachi says she's never heard of a repair cafe. You should check it out. There might be one in your area. They may go under different names. And Deborah says she lives in Asheville, North Carolina. Okay, have one in Asheville, Carolina, rather. I assume that's a repair cafe. All right, so let's see what else. FDA curbs drug linked to deaths of two teens. Consumers' pain motivates Trump to take action on prices. And Trump breaks with longtime ally Green. This was an interesting story if folks caught this over the last 2 days. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who had been a full-throated Trump MAGA supporter, has actually been criticizing Trump for quite a while now, focusing on the Epstein files. And he's, over the weekend or yesterday, just called her wacky, called her Marjorie Traitor Greene, and promised to support someone in a primary against her, which Marjorie Taylor Greene has been way out there and way crazy for a long time. I'm trying not to say that, go Marjorie, but go Marjorie. Is that what we've come to? Is that we're celebrating people like Marjorie Taylor Greene because she's willing to stand up to the president? These are strange times indeed. Dr. Tachi says that she's glad that there are two streams on YouTube, and that's right. I forgot to mention we haven't actually experimented with that before, but we have both the horizontal and the vertical stream on YouTube. So again, a interesting production tidbit. Here's the continuation of the front page article. Homeland's core missions are disrupted by deportations. And this is, you can see the article here. It's heartbreaking. You can't say you care about kids when you're diverting actual resources that are protecting children. Absolutely. And this is, again, so it's a 2-page spread. You see the picture of Stephen Miller here, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff and architect of the president's deportation agenda. Here's a letter details pressure forcing ouster. James Ryan, former president of the University of Virginia, wrote that the call for him to resign felt like a hostage situation. And Professor Bard from teaching a class, "Make America Great Again," was cited as white supremacy. And this was professor's lesson came to light after an Indiana University student filed a complaint with the U.S. senator. And then the back page, but it kind of continues with I mentioned earlier, that split life in a cultural crucible. U.S. college students share their hopes and concerns. That's an interesting feature. Just it doesn't seem like it's connected to anything in particular. Just a um, nice piece highlighting college students and their concerns. So we'll check that out. Um, and I see Deborah has shared a link in Facebook to the Repair Cafe in their area, in her area. And my mom says Marjorie Taylor Greene has guts. She's still crazy though. That's the scary part. She's still scared, still crazy. Um, what else do we have? So in the rest of that A book, it goes to a story about ICE and a report finds violations by former governor of the Fed. Um, this is interesting. Man bringing a baseball bat to Hubba's office is arrested. Law enforcement officials said on Saturday night they arrested a man who last week brought a baseball bat to the office of Alina Hubba, the acting U.S. attorney for New Jersey. This has been very controversial in terms of who was running that office. But another example of political violence. This is sports in outside of New York. Sports is not its own section. It's just got about 2 pages, and of course, the New York Times had discontinued their sports desk. Most of these stories are from the Athletic. Excuse me. This is a full thing around football. This is an article about Aaron Judge winning another MVP and comparing him to Derek Jeter. Of course, as you know, I'm a huge Yankees fan, so I will definitely take a look at that a little bit later. Um, and this is comes to the end, and then we have the obit section, another great section we haven't spent time on recently. You can always learn a lot from the obit section. For example, Sharon Camp, mother of Plan B, the morning after pill, dies at 81. Um, to bring an emergency birth control method to market, she started her own company. And then Elizabeth France, 84, versatile Tony-winning actress. Neil Simon saw her on stage and asked her to be in Brighton Beach Memoirs. So that's an interesting. And then you have the paid obits over here. And then again, for folks in the New York area, you get a full metro section. I get 2 pages. Accusation of desecration put a life's work in jeopardy. That's a Japan seeks extradition of a Manhattan doctor. For Queens, a win-win in Mamdani's victory in the mayoral race. From the flyover borough to the epicenter of everything is where Queens goes. Okay, so that's it for the A book, and it's 9:20, and I'm supposed to keep this to an hour, right? Why did why did we say that we were going to make this an hour-long show? It's not easy at all. I want to check uh, any more comments. Philip says, here's hoping Representative Thomas Massey can help write Marjorie Taylor Greene's sales, so to speak. Absolutely. And we have Queens has been the epicenter for foodies for quite a long time. And then we also have a comment on LinkedIn that I'm trying to figure out. And it's not coming up for me. I'm going to have to refresh the screen and see whether I can find out. Because I always want to know who's commenting when we can't see their picture. There we go. It is my good friend Walter. So Walter jumped over to LinkedIn, but for some reason his name and picture didn't show up. So I had to check on another monitor. All right, so let's quickly look through. I said I was going to look at the book review, so I'm going to go to the book review first. This is Angelica, Eliza, and Peggy. The Schuyler sisters. So that's certainly going to be a article I want to read. I know my daughter is a huge Hamilton fan, and in fact, when we were on vacation in Connecticut, we went to a bookstore in on the shore, and I'm blanking on the name now, but it was a huge. The bookstore actually had opened three different locations, and was phenomenal. And we bought a biography of the Schuyler sisters there. The nonfiction art books that are featured this week. This is what I'm going to focus on: Pride and Pleasure, the Schuyler sisters; Motherland, a feminist history of modern Russia from revolution to autocracy. I actually focused on Russian history in college, so that is definitely something I'm going to read about. True Nature, The Pilgrimage of Peter Matheson. Um, the Zorg, A Tale of Greed and Murder that Inspired the Abolition of Slavery. Yes, that's the ship that, if I'm not mistaken, that's a ship where the slave traders threw the slaves overboard. And claimed it as a loss, and tried to get the insurance money for it. 1942, if I'm not mistaken, 1942, when World War II engulfed the globe, and the wounded generation coming home after World War II. Um, Black Arms to Hold You Up: A History of Black Resistance. Definitely, definitely going to be an interesting read. And The Other Girl, I don't know what that is, but that those are all those are ones I'm going to focus on. Brian Washington's new novel Palaver is about an expat in Japan whose mother surprises him with a visit. How does he procrastinate from writing, hanging out at gay bars, or bothering my dog? Here's the article on uh, uh, Angelica, Eliza, and Peggy, the book review at least. And long before Hamilton hit Broadway, the Schuyler sisters were living their lives with warmth, humor, and insight. Um, this is the book review on feminist theory. Um, and the picture is Alexandra Kollontai, the Soviet commissar for social welfare after 1917 Bolshevik Revolution. How had a country of women freedom fighters become a country of aspiring housewives? Um, let's see. This is the Zorg. This is what I thought. The Death Ship. An incredible story. A powerful new history tells a shocking story of mass killing, human baseness, and the seeds of conscience. Um, a tale of greed and murder that inspired the abolition of slavery. Um, Within the blood-soaked history of the Atlantic slave trade, the vessel long known as the Zong, it was initially thought it was the Zong, but it's actually, whoops, sorry about that little flip there. It's actually the Zorg. It was a death ship of raging mortality on which the slavers in 1781 decided to throw scores of enslaved sick people overboard to collect insurance premiums. Absolutely uh, horrific. Within the horrific trauma of slavery, this story certainly stands out. Um, what else do we have here? Um, Drawn from life, this graphic history takes an unflinching look at Black activism and merges of the moment urgency with fact. So couldn't tell that it was a graphic history in when I was looking at the table of contents. But Walter, definitely, want to make sure flag that for you. I assume that you'd be either familiar with it or all over that particular story. And then these are the stories about the home front, 1942, when World War II engulfed the globe, and the wounded generation coming home after World War II. Um, let's see, more in from the book review. And here's an interesting, I remember seeing this online, the African American Idol. A young Black football star is worshipped by his town's mostly white inhabitants until they turn on him. That is certainly scary. And probably not too far from reality in some cases. Here we go. This is the rest of the book review. And again, for folks who are listening on Spotify, we're doing our best to describe what we're seeing and not rely just on the visual. But on Spotify, you can actually watch the video, which is pretty cool. We have just a few minutes left. We're going to try and keep it to the hour. I want to remind folks that Sree's Sunday New York Times Read Along is produced by Digimentors in partnership with Scroll and Scroll Global, one of India's most important independent websites. I did say I'd focus on the magazine, so that's the magazine cover story. Her desire to be a new mom again at 65 led to felony charges and a custody battle like no other. Um, what else do we have in the magazine this week? Um, the fog of Trump. In this presidency, the rules are vague. That might be the point. An escape from no man's land, as aerial drones turn Ukraine's front lines into a hellscape, ground drones are bringing out the dead and wounded. That's interesting. I hadn't heard about that before. Um, Here's a book, Honest Love Stories. It's an advertisement in celebration of 20 years of the New York Times Modern Love column. Honest love stories you'll want to read over and over again. And we had Daniel Jones on as a guest on Valentine's Day several years ago, which was, again, another highlight for both Sree and myself. Here's a New York Times Magazine article, Prime Time. Excuse me, can the NBA make for good TV again? So focus on basketball. Greg Gutfeld has theories on how he crushed the late night competition. Let's see, what else? After 35 years, do I still have to cook for my husband? That's an interesting ethicist question. We will not have time to go into it today, unfortunately. The final days of big box stores. And then this is the medical diagnosis column. Every now and then, the man was overwhelmed by dizziness when he turned his head. After years of symptoms, he finally sought answers. Let's see, these are it's a recipe for pumpkin mini muffins. And then this is the cover story on the woman who wouldn't stop having children. Even at 65, Mary Beth Lewis was determined to grow her family. She ended up with felony charges and an unprecedented custody battle. That is interesting. Let's see, what else do we have here? So let's check out the graphic design on this one. You can see on the left-hand side, the fog of Trump in this presidency. The rules are vague. That might be the point, by Matthew Purdy, illustration by Ricardo Tomas. But to try and describe this for folks who might be listening, it's just that text on a white background on the left, and the text is not left aligned by any means, nor centered. It's kind of in a zigzag going across the page, kind of back and forth. And it's interesting, the headline is in black, but then the rest of the text describing the article and the byline is in red. On the right-hand side of that is the image, which is an image of the American flag, but it's all pixelated, which is interesting as well. And they repeat some of that kind of jagged alignment for a pull quote. None of Donald Trump's edicts have deployed vagueness as effectively as his attack on DEI. This is Escape from No Man's Land. This is the Ukraine story, I assume, with with drones. And let's see what else we have in the magazine as we bring this show to a close. Anything else in here? Looks like we're mostly looking at ads at this point. So that will be that for the magazine. We'll leave the book review on top to make sure that I get to read it. As a reminder for folks, we want to thank and acknowledge our sponsors. Muck, longtime sponsor of the New York Times Read Along, and Graphic History Company, who joined us just recently. Walter Grayson, Tim Fielder, and Christina Hunsbrook are behind the Graphic History Company. Thank you so much for all of your support. And if you are interested, make sure to go to the graphichistorycompany.com website and sign up for updates so you get volume 3 of the graphic history of hip hop. I am back at the desk, and we made it to the hour. At least catch up on some of the comments that I wasn't able to get to when I was looking at the paper. Let's see. I think this is Walter saying on Russian history, read more from James Hyson and new work by Masha Fedorova. Uh, and Mukul says it's a fascinating book review of the motherland of Russia. Um, and and Apollo makes reference. Yes, it's the Zong case, but again, the name is different. I think it's used to be called. They used to think it was Zong with an N, but I believe it's Zorg, Zorg. Um, and let's see who else. Um, Sujana asked, "What's missing? Articles about the president's obvious mental and physical decline." Absolutely, Sujana. That was it. Was there was no reference to that at all in the paper, and I'm not letting my husband read that ethicist piece. I'm afraid of going hungry. Jonathan says, "Great show, thank you." Sujana, well done. Neil Parekh, thank you, Sujana. I appreciate that. And Mary says the show goes way too fast. And please keep Charlotte in your thoughts. Border Patrol is going to churches now. Absolutely. The latest city to be invaded by American, uh, the troops, law enforcement, administration, heavies in whatever uniform or whatever agency they're representing. It's nothing short of a domestic invasion. Um, Mary, we certainly will be thinking of you and everyone else in Charlotte as you deal with this. Apollo says this has been an awesome episode. Have a great week ahead, everyone. Philip says much appreciated, and Mukul says great job, Neil. Thank you. I would like to encourage folks, if you're interested in getting notices about the show, please make sure to send me an email to Neil Parekh, Neil at digimentors.group, Neil at digimentors.group, and I will add you to the mailing list. And of course, I wasn't able to add any comments into Facebook during the show, but I will go back and try and engage with folks a little bit later. As a reminder, we had a show on perimenopause and mental health last Thursday, and I'll share the links to that if you want to go back and watch. What I thought was really interesting, there are two things. One, our guests actually learned a lot about perimenopause. Lisa Falcone and Aisha Sultan are both in perimenopause at the moment. And Dr. Ellen Albertson is with the National Menopause Foundation. She talked about the depression that she experienced when she went through perimenopause. The other thing that stood out for me in terms of the conversation is that they shared that the changes to women's bodies during perimenopause are as significant as the changes during pregnancy. So that's something to keep in mind. And then we'll be following up that conversation with our next episode of Shining Light on Shadows, a candid conversation about mental health on December 11th, post-menopause and mental health. Dr. Alan Albertson will be coming back, but we'll have Tess Rondo, who is a small business owner, and Candace Sanchez, the host of Unspoken Conversations with Candace. They will join us to talk about their experiences. And Dawn, as well, my co-host, is also post-menopause. So they'll be sharing their experiences. And this is a conversation that I'm very proud. I'm very proud of the work that we're doing on mental health. I'm particularly proud of the work that we're doing to raise awareness about perimenopause and menopause and mental health. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Dr. Tachi says, thank you. This is a great show. Appreciate that. And look forward to seeing everyone next week. I'll be hosting again, going solo. And then Sree will be back with us for a bit after the Thanksgiving holidays. Have a great Sunday, and look forward to catching up next week. Take care. Bye-bye.